Welcome back to DataCloud Global Congress 2021. This session is on landing a successful cloud business in China in partnership with Chayora. I'd like to thank Chayora for supporting this year's DataCloud Global Congress. Make sure that you head to their sponsor page and set up meetings with the team during the event. It is my great pleasure to hand over to the moderator for this session, Wing-Dar Ker, who's Senior Advisor of Cloud Services at Chayora. Wing-Dar, over to you.
Thank you, Liz. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, whenever and wherever you are right now. Pandemic has restricted our physical movement, but with technology, especially cloud, continue to enable us to connect and talk about important topics from different continents. I'd like to thank you for tuning in and explore with us on how to land a successful cloud business in China. Like Liz said, my name is Wing-Dar Ker. I'm currently Senior Advisor on Cloud Service of Chayora Holding. My 30 years experience are mostly in high-tech, IT, data center, and telecom-related industry, with 20 of those years with Microsoft in Asia Pacific and Japan region, managing different functions. In the past 7 years, I have been working at the NASDAQ-listed China data center operator that Microsoft selected as local partner to manage and run Microsoft Azure, Office 365, and Dynamics 365 cloud offering in China. With close collaboration with central and local government, I also get to know the compliance-related issue, not only from the top-level policy setting, and also on the day-to-day working level detail. I have talked to many MNC, which is multinational companies executives, including companies from EU, about China cloud experience during the past few years. Those exposure is especially relevant to our panel discussion topic today, which is landing a successful cloud business in China. We have invited experts that either consult or execute cloud market research or strategic implementation for a very in-depth discussion on this subject matter later on. We will talk about China as the growth engine of the world. With the acceleration of data accumulation and the trend toward cloud, China has become a huge market in data center and cloud area. With current geopolitical tension around the world, I'm sure our audience is very interested in knowing what's China government current attitude and policy toward foreign direct investment. Of course, we will have cloud solution provider to talk about their past experience and advise the audience of their learning about what to do and don't. Without further ado, let me introduce our three panelists today and ask them to talk about their background before we formally go into our topic. The sequence of our introduction is based on the conversation flow that we are going to have later on. First of all, let me introduce our first panelist, Mr. Jabez Tan, who's the head of research of structural research based in Los Angeles, California. Jabez, would you do a quick introduction of yourself and about structural research?
Yeah, thanks so much, Wing-Dar, and hi, everyone. For those that are not familiar with us, Structural Research is a global market research firm, and we specialize specifically in the coverage of data center and hyperscale cloud, internet infrastructure services, and the ecosystem around that. And we have had a very specialized focus on the Asia Pacific region since we started the firm in 2011. So we've been covering the sector for quite a while. And then we want to just dive into some of the market research numbers that we've published on the APAC region and on the China market in particular. So according to our internal estimates, the global data center co-location market is just around $54 billion in terms of market size, in terms of revenue generated by data center co-location services in 2020. And that's growing at just over 11% CAGR that we are projecting between 2020 to 2025. And to translate that number into data center capacity, which we measure in terms of critical IT load capacity, so that's just under 17 gigawatts of data center capacity globally in 2020, and that's going to grow at a 10% CAGR to 26 gigawatts by 2025. And so where does Asia Pacific sit within that whole global market size, and where does China in particular sit within it? So the Asia Pacific region currently accounts for around 41% of the global data center market. And focusing and zooming in on China in particular, China represents just over 20% of the global market. So it's a massive data center market, and it represents just under 50% of the Asia Pacific region. So it takes up just around half of the overall Asia Pacific market in terms of data center capacity. So that's where we have China at just over 3.4 gigawatts or 3,400 megawatts of capacity today. And that's projected to grow to over 4,500 megawatts by 2025. And that's really a testament to the addressable size of the market, both domestic and international companies expanding within China. And if you guys are not familiar with the China market, the majority of the data center capacity and cloud capacity in China is centered around the tier one markets. And so we define the tier one markets as Shanghai, Beijing, Guangzhou, and Shenzhen. And those four markets take up just over 75% of the Chinese market. So that's where you kind of see that main concentration of capacity in China. And so that's from a data center co-location standpoint. From a hyperscale cloud perspective, in terms of measuring the hyperscale cloud market, the global hyperscale cloud market, which is taking into account all the global providers like AWS, Microsoft Azure, Google, Alibaba Cloud, Tencent Cloud, Huawei, Kingsoft, and so on and so forth. That global market size is just over $90 billion in 2020. And that's growing at a 33% CAGR that we're projecting between 2020 and 2025. And so by 2025, the hyperscale cloud market is going to be, according to our estimates, which we think is relatively conservative, that will be over $380 billion being generated by these hyperscale cloud players. So that's a massive growth trajectory that we're projecting moving forward. And that's been validated by, I think, a lot of the conversations that we're having across the industry with data center operators and users and the hyperscale cloud providers themselves. And so China, at around, will represent around 12 billion of that market size in 2020 and growing to over 58 billion by 2025. And so if you look at the CAGRs, the global CAGR for hyperscale cloud is 33%, whereas China will be growing at a 38%. So it's definitely outpacing the growth in terms of global indexing, and we expect that to continue moving forward. And some of the trends, Wing-Dar, that I wanted to highlight before handing over to you and the rest of the panelists, is what we've seen, interestingly enough, during the pandemic in 2020 is that between Q1 of 2020 and Q3 of 2020, the Western hyperscale cloud growth was actually decelerating. So if you look at Amazon, you look at Microsoft and Google, their hyperscale cloud numbers were actually trending down in terms of year-over-year growth between Q1 of last year and Q3. On the flip side, the Chinese clouds, Alibaba Cloud and Kingsoft Cloud, who are publicly traded, they've actually disclosed accelerating year-over-year growth rates between Q1 and Q3. So that's really a testament to how China has bounced back extremely quickly from the pandemic due to their ability to contain the virus. But what's interesting is once you hit Q4 and into Q1 of this year, the Western hyperscalers are accelerating in cloud growth, whereas the Chinese clouds are showing some levels of deceleration. And we think that's because a lot of the Chinese companies are beginning to start thinking about international expansion. So they've spent a lot of time expanding within China, but are starting to really flex their international muscle and expand outside of China. And Hong Kong, that we've been tracking really closely, the Hong Kong data center market, that market is projected by us to double in capacity in the next 5 years. And so that's really driving a lot of that data center growth. And also within China, what we're seeing is an expansion of hyperscale cloud nodes outside of the major tier one hubs. So markets like Chengdu and Chongqing are more remote locations within China that have seen some cloud node expansion. So that's just some of the high level takeaways that we're seeing here at Structure Research. And I'll hand it back over to Wing-Dar to introduce the other panelists. Thanks for that.
Okay, thank you, Jabez. Actually, I was thinking about asking you to introduce yourself and the company, but you talk about China growth, which we will talk more later on, and hopefully there are some more detail you can share with us. For the next panelist, I think let's focus on introduction of yourself and the company itself. Then we go to the Q&A session later on. Okay, our second panelist is Dr. Qin, who is the CEO and the president of CCID Consulting, one of the most prestigious consulting and research firm in China, which just celebrated their 20th anniversary recently. I also like to congratulate their stock listing moving from JAM to main board on Hong Kong Stock Exchange. Dr. Qin, can you do an introduction of yourself and CCID? Thank you.
Yeah. First, thank you for congratulations, and it's a very great honor to see you guys. And I'm Dr. Qin Haiding, and you guys can call me Robinson. And actually, we are doing a lot of research about the market of cloud computing and some data center. And of course, we do a lot of research for the policy explanation, and especially in the ICT fields. And we have a lot of connections with the companies in the fields of ICT. And we will do a lot of calculation about the scale of the ICT, or to do some investigation and investigation about the market of ICT. Of course, we focus on the research of the data cloud or some cloud computing. So we have some insights about these fields. So of course, let me introduce the CCID Consulting. Just like the Wing-Dar Ker said, we have already been moving forward for 20 years. And several days ago, we have already move from the GAM to the main board of HK Stock Exchange. I hope you guys can show a lot of attention about our company, and I hope we can share a lot of insights or opinions in this panel. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Qin. Last but not the least, let's welcome our third panelist, Mr. Gary Sun, who is the chairman of Microsoft Asia Pacific Technology Limited Company and has been the integrated part of Azure launch in China and the ongoing cloud operation. Gary, can you do a quick introduction about yourself and Microsoft China in general?
Yes, absolutely. Thank you so much, Wing, for the invitation and also the opportunity to be able to speak in this event. Yes, my name is Gary Sun, and I'm currently the chairman of Microsoft Asia Pacific Technology Limited Company, short for MATL. I have over 35 years experience in IT industry, and my career started with digital equipment company, followed by the Boeing company, then joined Microsoft in 1995. So I have been with Microsoft for 26 years and served many leadership roles in various functions in both the US and Asia Pacifics. For the last 6 years, I'm responsible for cloud operations in China, as Wayne mentioned, and Microsoft's actually the first public cloud landed in China by a foreign company. And in the same capacity of doing work in China, I also responsible for Southeast Asia emerging market growth from the Azure engineering perspective. So let me share a little bit more about Microsoft China. Microsoft China, it is established in 1992 with a sales rep office initially. As time evolved, today Microsoft China has over 6,500 people across sales and marketing, Microsoft research, product engineering, which is cover all the products, hardware device engineering, and also customer services and support. And MATL is actually a Microsoft China wholly owned subsidiary to focus on China cloud and artificial intelligence. And we actually have over 1,000 employees between Beijing and Shanghai sites. So I'd love to spend more time to talk about how we operate the cloud in China and how some of this lesson learned going forward. Thank you, Wing.
Okay, thank you, Gary. Okay, I think on the next Q&A session, I would take turn ask each panelist question, which are mostly in their main expertise area. Let's keep the answer within 2 to 3 minutes if possible. And other panelists are more than welcome to add on to the answer if you have any relevant insight and input as well, okay? So the first question go to Jabez. Okay, you have talked, based on your earlier introduction, you have done extensive research in Asia for quite some time. Given our focus today is more about China cloud and data center growth due to the acceleration and the data accumulation and the faster adoption and migration to the cloud, okay? Is there any more data insight or research number that you want to share with us today?
Yeah, thanks, Wing-Dar, and sorry earlier for going on my monologue. But essentially, I've answered the question in the prepared remarks that I said earlier. So I didn't want to take too much time away from the other panelists to share their insights, but happy to hop in later on to add more insights. So thanks, Wing-Dar.
Okay. So maybe you can introduce yourself in the research, structured research a little bit more because you didn't cover too much about that.
Yeah, I mean, I think just to reiterate, we are a global market research firm covering the data center and hyperscale cloud ecosystem around the world. Okay. So we're a very specialized firm, and I've spent a lot of time covering the Asia Pacific region. I was born and raised in Singapore, so have very familiar with the region there. And so, pre-COVID, we would travel to the region to do a lot of on-the-ground research. Myself, I will be touring data centers across Singapore, Hong Kong, Japan, and Australia, and meeting with SDN providers, co-location providers, hyperscale cloud providers, to really get a good sense of on-the-ground pulse in the market. And from that, we publish some really detailed and granular market research and market data reports that are covering the supply-demand dynamic, pricing projections, hyperscale cloud mapping, and the growth rates over the next 5 years. So I appreciate the opportunity to share, Wing-Dar, and handing it over back to you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so the next one we're going to ask Dr. Chen. As far as I know, that CCID is not only consulting for the commercial company like Microsoft, multinational company, and many other local, but also state-owned enterprise. But CCID is also doing many research and consulting projects for central, provincial, and city governments, because I really have quite a few consulting project working with CCID on the government side, which is proven to be very, very useful. With the current geopolitical tension between China and US and some ripple effect in EU as well, you probably have better insight than other people about what's the current government attitude toward foreign company doing business in China. Can you share some of your insight with our audience?
Okay, and this is a good question. And actually, we CCID Consulting have a lot of connection with the governments, central government or local governments. We do a lot of planning, like 14-5 plan for some local governments. And these governments wants us to give them some opinions about how to draw the picture about the future, how to make a plan for like a digital city, how to build this digital city. And according to this demands, we have to do a lot of research do a lot of investigation. Of course, we will talk about it with a lot of the companies or entrepreneurs to have their opinions about how to build the digital city. So when we do this kind of 5-year plan, we will make a bigger plan, and also about including the basement of the digital economy, and we will find the foundation of the digital economy is the cloud, some cloud data center. We have to suggest the cities to build more and more data centers. And of course, like the Mr. Sun from Microsoft, he just said, there are eternal companies like Alibaba or Tencent. They have already make a plans or make a business for the cloud make a cloud planning for the city. But now, actually, the Chinese government still have the policies. I mean, the opening policies for all the companies from overseas and abroad. The overseas and abroad is a welcoming policy, because the Chinese market is still big. Chinese market attract a lot of attention. We need a lot of helpers, no matter who is foreign or the companies is from overseas or from the mainland. We still welcome the companies to help the Chinese or Chinese government to build the digital city. So we find out there are some policies of the China. It asks if you want to enter the Chinese market to build cloud, you have to cooperate. I mean, the foreign company have to cooperate with the mainland companies, get together to build the digital city. You have to become a joint venture. You cannot right now, until now, you cannot to be the solo companies, foreign companies to enter the Chinese market. So you can offer foreign companies can offer the technology or the capital, and Chinese company can offer afford the local experience or some experience about the Chinese policies, so they can get together and to hold some joint venture. So like this way, the foreign companies can enter the Chinese market. Of course, there are more details about the details about the Chinese policy about the cloud. So later on, I can share some the policies about in Chinese version, So okay. I can share that one. So okay. Maybe I can show more details information.
Okay.
So
okay.
That's it. If you want more, we can talk about more. Yes.
Okay, great. Appreciate that, Dr. Chen. And actually, this is a very good lead into our next conversation, because like Dr. Chen mentioned, that a cloud is a regulated business in China. There's a lot of compliance related, and the government strongly encourage a local partnership Okay, and Gary, Microsoft is the first multinational company launching public cloud in China when the regulation, governance are still non-existent or very vague, to say the minimum. Can you share with the audience of the history, lesson learned, and what to watch out for when companies launch cloud service in China?
Yeah, absolutely, Wing. It's like you mentioned, you know, when we first launched, I think there is regulations and there are policies, but then they are very vague, right? So we have to kind of learn as we go. And also, like Dr. Ching mentioned, you know, this is something that we must know, we must leverage a local partner, right? So Microsoft, like I mentioned earlier, is the first MNC to launch a public cloud in China in 2014. And initially, we launched Azure with Office 365, later on followed by Dynamics 365 and also the Power Platforms. So as we embark the cloud journey in China, you know, the one thing that we discovered is that we have to follow the local regulations and policies, right? And first and foremost, we have to use local partners to operate, right? And we call it an operating entity. So the operating entity will obtain all the qualified license to operate a cloud for us. As a foreign company, we cannot operate clouds in China. So in this case, Microsoft actually uses 21 Vietnam as our OE. So basically, they are responsible for all the operations from both the business operations as well as technical operations. And then Microsoft provides what we call technology licenses to them. So that's how we operate in China. As time evolves, you know, China cloud regulatory gets more and mature. And actually, there's new compliance policies are coming up every year. So we have to really comply. And most of them are especially around securities and data sovereignties. So actually, you know, Microsoft is an industry leader in terms of compliance. And, you know, our cloud has more comprehensive cloud compliance certification portfolio today, which is over 90 compliance offerings. And that's also including the Europe's GDPR. So Microsoft is very strong in terms of building Azures and run Azures on trust. That's what we do. And I think that's our biggest differentiator from our competitors in local. Okay. And the one thing we do is we always tell people saying we will not touch customer data without customers' permission. In other words, we will only touch customer data as needed, and we will gain permission from them first. So that's in turn how do we manage our data and show trust. Other couple lesson learned in terms of infrastructure. I think one is data center capacity. And I think, you know, Dr. Ching mentioned China is building a lot of data centers. There's a lot of, how do I say, investment into this. But what we found actually, it is still at scarcity because there's just demand is a lot greater than the supply at this time. And in other words, also drive up the cost, so which is not that good for us. And another thing is the network bandwidth. And it's actually pretty much controlled by the three telcos in China. And they actually monopolize the market. This also kind of drive up the price, right? So I think that's other lesson learned in terms of infrastructure for Microsoft. But all in all, I think that with all the lesson learned and challenges, we still see opportunities in China. Mainly because it is a #2 economy in the world, which is we cannot ignore, right? So I think, matter of fact, we're seeing more and more MNCs are coming to China adopting Azure in the past few years, right? To name a few customers like General Mills, Cummins, Procter & Gamble, L'Oreal, Volkswagens, right? Those MNCs are all coming to China and using our clouds. And that's actually one of our growing areas. And today, in terms of capacity, Microsoft has 4 regions in China. And we're actually going to expand 2 more regions by next spring, so which will double our capacity in China. So overall, we still see very promising opportunities in China, especially for these MNC companies. Back to you, Wayne.
Okay, great, great. As Gary mentioned, that there's a lot of confusion and misunderstanding about data privacy,
Wait,
ownership, yeah. Okay.
yes,
So
I
sorry.
want
Yeah,
to say
Dr.
something.
Chen, you want to add on to something? Yeah, please.
Yes, I want to say something more.
Okay.
Just now we talk about the policy of Chinese policy about the cloud market, right? Actually, 10 years ago, we had a lot of concepts about cloud. 10 years ago, at that time, the technology was not mature, and the market was still unknown. So 10 years later now, the lot of companies still wondering uh, whether should go get on the cloud. But now the Chinese government urge or stimulate the companies or the governments, local governments to get a lot of data on the cloud. So it's getting a lot of bigger and bigger markets. I mean, just like Gary Sun said, Chinese market is a promising, and I'm sure the Chinese policy about the cloud is getting more open and more open. I think Chinese governments still need the high tech companies. I mean, on this field. So I'm a confident about the cooperation Chinese companies with the foreign companies. Of course, now we have some regulations. I'm sure in the US, in the EU, there are also a lot of regulations because it is concerning the security. So
Right.
if you build a trust between among us or between the companies, I'm sure the policy will be more open. It's my opinion. Wait.
Yes.
Yes. Yes. Okay. Yes, for sure. I think many of the misunderstanding about the regulation and about the difficulty of doing business in China, and actually it's not, because like Dr. Chin and Gary said, in the past few years, that the rule and regulation has become much more clear and very transparent and open. And compliance is part of doing business in any country. So I don't think that that's an issue. And we are almost coming to the end of our session. Sorry about the timing that we have was only like 40 minutes. So let me ask the final question to all the panelists, and maybe you can talk about, maybe give your 1 to 1.5 minute summary or advice and suggestion to the audience on why and how to land a successful cloud business in China. Jabez, do you want to take it first?
Sure.
Why and how to, yeah.
Yeah, so I think I'll keep it short. I think obviously, the stats that we listed earlier about the potential total market size of China and the potential growth rates over the next 5 years. It's impossible for a legitimate enterprise company to truly ignore the Chinese market, given the size of the population, the pace at which technology advancements are accelerating in China, and how quickly it's bounced back from COVID. I think it has put it in a very good position to capitalize on technology growth and innovation. So, I think everyone needs to have a China strategy of how they're going to address the Chinese market, whether it be through, like Gary mentioned, through operating entities, VIE structures, partnering with local companies in China to deliver your services. And so I think that's very important. I think on the other hand, it's one thing to deploy data center capacity or cloud capacity in China, but I think another really important thing to keep in mind is it's that connectivity is also extremely crucial in China if you want to deliver those services, high performance, low latency, compliant. You have to partner with the right connectivity providers that can give you the best route to your end users and the best user experience. So I think because user experience is becoming increasingly important, and how customer acquisition is really dependent on the performance of your apps, connectivity, being able to partner with the right connectivity providers is very crucial as well. And so that must be a consideration as you think about expanding into the Chinese market. So back to you, Wing.
Okay, thank you very much. And Dr. Chin, do you want to give a quick summary on the doing?
Okay, and the first one, you have to know clearly about the Chinese policy, and about it, especially the policy is changing very fast. We have to know following the policy. Second, we can, I suggest the potential companies who wants to enter the Chinese market, they can cooperate with some local governments, like the Jabez said, Chengdu, Chongqing, like the western cities. Actually, they need this kind of foreign companies to invest in these cities. They urge very hopefully want some capital and still to build their cities. So maybe it's easy for the foreign companies to base in these western cities. Third, we have to know of course, the Chinese culture is totally different from the Western world. We have to know the Chinese people, what are they thinking about? What do they really want? So 3 suggestions.
Okay, very well, very well. And Gary?
Yeah, and I think, pretty much Jabez and Dr. Chin has mentioned or said it. I think just a few things to add. I mean, to me, there's regulations, policies are very, very important. You got to understand them. They are changing as they progress, as they mature. So got to follow that. But I think a good thing is that, the government will give you warnings. I mean, they're not just going to come back and say, I changed this, you must, it's like you got to change right away. They will give you a grace period and then allow you time to make the changes. So I think that's pretty good and reasonable. And for us, for sure, you got to find the right partners to partner with. Somebody that has, high integrity, kind of share the same values. And I think those are especially for MNCs who wants to come into China. And last not but least, but my experience in China, I always put this thing, is nothing's easy in China, but everything is possible.
Yeah. Yes, indeed. Yes. And actually, it's a very good point that people mention, because cloud regulation and governance and compliance, it's just like IT. It's an evolving process. With the technology evolve, regulation change accordingly. So, but there's a much easier way to do this. Instead, for any cloud service provider coming into China and they need to learn all the tricks, all the regulation government, there is local partner that you can partner with, like Chayora Holding, right? I'm doing a quick commercial here that we actually know the tricks. We know the local government, as Dr. Chin mentioned, that you need to have local government connection, which every government is very welcoming new business going into their region. And also how to be neutral with the same shared value, and we can play a very interesting role here. So with that, I'd like to thank the panelists to take the time to join our conversation about landing successful cloud business in China. I also like to thank the audience for watching and listening to our panel. Hopefully, you will find it useful in your planning and journey into China market. Keep safe, and until we see each other next time. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you to Wing-Dar for your expert moderation, and to Jabez, Dr. Chin, and Gary for joining us. I'd like to remind you to go and speak with the Chayora team by visiting their virtual booth to carry on the conversation. The next session in the Edge and Cloud Spotlight starts in 20 minutes on Framing the Edge. I look forward to seeing you there.